Okay, in this next video we're going to try to do the GeoPak Road 2 exercise, bridge end bent layout. When we're done with our bridge end bent layout, we should get a model that looks fairly similar to what we have here in this picture at the beginning of the bridge end bent exercise. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to the first step of the exercise. In the first step it says open up the survey file, which is in their Pike J2P 3081, the data folder. So we're going to go ahead and open up that survey file. Then we're going to review the survey file, and then using the level display we're going to turn off all the levels except for existing edge of pavement and shoulder and the terrain model. So here's the survey file. I had it opened already, and you can see that in the survey file we got the text turned on. We got a bunch of other lines turned on, and we're going to turn all that off except the items that I mentioned just a second ago. And we're going to use the level manager to do this. Now, by using the level manager to turn off text, that's going to create an issue later on in our design, and we'll show you that issue, and then we'll come back to the survey file and turn off the text the correct way. Okay, so I'm going to go to level manager, and in level manager I'm just going to right click and do an off by element. I'm going to turn the text off, tree lines, ridge lines, flow lines, spot shots, more spot shots, pole locations, more text, the center line, these poles there, and I think over here we got a fence line and some guardrail. And when you're done with turning all that off, got one more thing, a T-riser there. When you're done with turning all that off, you should look very similar to what I have. Okay, so we can close down the level display, and so this is going to be our survey file. You can see this outer thing is our terrain model. It's on terrain existing boundary. If we turn on the triangles, you'd be able to see the triangles and the contours and whatever other item you would want to turn on. But typically I like to work with the terrain model, or the triangles off and the contours off. Okay, so we're going to go back to the exercise. We've pretty much got all of step number 1 done. We're going to move on to step number 2, and it wants us to create a civil geometry.dgn file. We're going to be using a iProject 2D Power GeoPak file. Once we create that file, it wants us to set the annotation scale to 50 because we're going to be plotting some stationing and tick marks for our main line, and we want those to be drawn at a 50 scale and not a 100. And then we're going to reference in the survey file and make sure the active terrain is set or turned on. Once that's turned on, we're going to open up the profile model and then look at our proposed profiles, and if we need to, we're going to set the proposed profile as active. Okay, so let's do a file new, no wizard. I'm going to be storing it in my data folder. I'm going to make sure that's the correct data folder. It's under District CAD, Design Pike, the job number, and data, so that is correct. I'm going to give it the correct name, and since we've just moved to the new project-wise, once I type it in here, it will automatically fill out the file name for us. The seed file is a iProject 2D. That's what we need for a civil geometry file. Once you have that set just like so, you're going to go ahead and hit OK and create that file. We're going to check in the survey file. And in step 2A, it wanted us to set the annotation scale to 50, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, that's for we want the tick symbology to be correct for a 50 scale. The next thing it wanted us to do in step 2B was to import the profile called mainline and the profile called proposed. So we're going to go to Task, Civil Tools, General Geometry. We're going to go to the first icon in the second row. That is Import Geometry. When you select that, we need to define a GPK, and we do have a GPK that has those alignments in it. It's in our data folder. So job 081. And with GPKs, all you have to do is basically expand this out, and we want the proposed profile called or the profile called propose. If I click on that, it'll check all this other stuff, and so we're going to get the main line when we bring in the proposed profile. So we're going to go ahead and hit import that, and once it imports it, it's going to because it has the feature definition called MODOT baseline propose, it's going to export it back out to that GPK and then run it through the DNC manager to plot the stationing and tick marks. So we're going to select OK to that GPK. And it's going to take a second, but it will plot both the alignment and profile into this drawing. And there's the alignment. Now the thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to add in the actually I will open up the profile window just to show you that we do not have an existing ground profile. I'm going to use view number 8, and once I open up view 8, I just have to select with a left click in that window. So there is the proposed profile, but again there is no existing ground. To get the existing ground, all you have to do is reference in the existing ground terrain terrain from the survey file. And so I'm just going to go to I'm going to make sure that my view number 1 is active, and then I'm going to go to reference, and then I'm going to go to in the reference dialog, go to tools attach, and select the survey file. Once the survey file is in the drawing, I'm going to bring back view number 8 again, just to show you that there's still no existing ground, but as soon as I go to the existing ground terrain and set it active, I'll get my existing ground. That's something you get automatically when you have an existing ground terrain and it's active. Alright. The next step that we need to do is check and make sure that the profile model, or in the profile model, that the proposed profile is active. And to do that, all you have to do is come into the proposed profile and just hover your cursor over it, and then it will say what if the profile is active or not. You can see that that one's active and my existing ground is not. Okay. Let's go back to the manual. We're in step number 3 now. We're going to open up the plan file, and then we're going to review the plan geometry and then attach the civil geometry file to it. So we're going to go ahead and do a file open. We're going to open up the plan file. We're going to check in the civil geometry file. And before I look at anything as far as what's in the plan file, I'm just going to reference in the civil geometry file first and then talk about the plan geometry. Oh, got to make sure I'm pulling it from the right location. District CAD, design, and then Pike, J2P 3081, data, and I'm going to select the civil geometry file. Now if I look at the plan geometry, what I have in there is here's my center line from my civil geometry file, but then I also have some edges of pavement that I drew there just offset from the center line, both left and right. You can see there are edges of pavement, and then I've got the 2 end vents drawn in there for the bridge, and the creek or whatever that's going under the bridge goes right through there. And I also added in some station values that correlate with what's being taught in the manual. So when the manual calls out a certain station range, it typically will refer to one of these station values that I have out here, and these are just labels that I place to help with that. Now before this line here is going to be the roadway section, and then on the other side of this line this is going to be the bridge slab, okay, or the approach slab and then bridge slab. So so just be aware that that's what that line perpendicular is indicating, the difference between the approach slab and the roadway pavement. Let's go back to the manual. In step number 4, it wants us to create a corridors file. So we're going to copy that. And we're going to do a file new again. Again, a corridors file is going to be a 2D file. So again, we default to the 2D file, so that's just set perfectly. We're going to go ahead and paste in the name where you could type it in. Again, now you just have to type it in the one location and it automatically copies it down to the file name location. So we're going to hit OK to that and create the new file. We're going to check in the plan file. And while we're waiting for that to finish up, I'm going to look at the rest of step 4. The first 3 parts of it want us to reference in these following 3 files: the survey, the plan, and the civil geometry. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll go to the reference dialog. We're going to go to Tools, Attach, Survey, Plan, and Civil Geometry. Again, we want to make sure we're pulling it from the right location. We are on that chance, in that case. If we do a fit view, we should be able to find that. Next step it wants us to do is activate the existing ground terrain. This is step 4D. 4D. So we're going to go ahead and activate the terrain. Then it wants us to open up the project template library. And so I'm going to go up to my task. Since this is the first time into the template library, we need to go to Task. We're going to go down to Civil Tools. Then we're going to slide down to Corridor Modeling. And the second last icon on the top row is Create Template. So we're going to select that. Typically when this opens up for the very first time, it will go out to the mo.itl on the T drive. We want the ITL that's in our data folder. So we're going to do a File, Open. We're going to go to District CAD. We're going to go to Design, Pike, J2P 3081, Data, and then there's the ITL for this project. We'll go ahead and open that up. Once that opens up, we're going to look at the bridge and the roadway templates, and they should both be under the J2P 3081 folder. And so there's the folder. Here's the bridge templates. The first one is a 2:1 earth slope with upper concrete structure. And so this will be what we model our end vent with. Then the bridge template is basically just a roadway template with barrier curb on it. And then we got something called a clipping template, which is just a horizontal line at a certain width. And we'll talk more about what the clipping template will do later on. We got 2 templates under the roadway. We've got one that is basically a 2-lane ag base, option 1, mill and fill with concrete widening. So in the middle we got a mill and fill, and then we got the widening, and then we got our ditches on the outside there. We got a fill slope and a ditch slope with the same type of slope. If you wanted to, you could test this template. I'm just going to use the active terrain, and I'm going to draw. You can see how it's drawn. You can see the mill and fill in the middle there, and so that looks appropriate. Okay, so those are the templates that we're going to be trying to use. The next thing it says, we're closing the template library, so let's make sure we did that. We did. And it says select Create Corridor. Select the Create Corridor tool. And we're going to name that corridor Route 14, and we're going to apply the 2-lane with ag base option 1 mill and fill concrete widening from station 68 down to 71 plus 68.64 with a template drop of 25 feet. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, we are in the corridors file, and so we're going to go up to the task pull down. We're going to go back to corridor modeling. The very first icon in there is create corridor. When you click on that, it's normally going to ask for a baseline, and we got one baseline here. It's right in the middle there, and it says locate profile, reset for active profile. We're going to use the active profile, which is the proposed profile. So a reset is a right click, and for the corridor name we're going to call it Route 14. And now it's going to ask for the template option, and some other information in this dialog. So we're going to go ahead and set that. Since we went into the template library a second ago, it remembers which template library we're using. So we're going to expand that out. We're going to go to the J2P 3081 folder. We're going to go to roadway, and we're going to select the 2-lane with ag base option 1 mill and fill concrete widening. Okay. And we'll accept that. Now it's asking for the location where we want to place this. Remember, in the exercise, it wants us to go from station 68 plus 00, so I'm going to type that in and lock it. If you look on the screen, it's only going down a certain distance. It's not going all the way down. We're just kind of focusing on the end bent area. So we're going to accept that with a left click. And now the end location, it wants us to go to 71 plus 68.64. I'm going to enter that and lock it in. And we're going to accept that. The template drop is going to be every 25 feet. Minimum transition we're not going to worry about. We're going to leave that at 0. Same thing for the after drop transition. I'll leave that at 0. You could put a description in there if you want to, but we normally leave this blank. So it's going to go out there and apply that template to our alignment and profile, and it's going to add that to the corridor. Now I'm going to hit the F4 key to get out of all tools, and then I'm going to hit the F6 key to see my 3D model. Now you'll notice in my 3D model, even though I turn the text off, I'm getting a whole bunch of survey text in my model, and that will cause problems, especially if you cut, say, a section through here using the cross-section tool. And just to show you this, I'm going to go up to Task. I'm going to go down to Open Cross-Section View. This is kind of like opening a profile view. You just click on it. It says locate the corridor alignment, so we can go into the, click on the alignment if we wanted to. It's going to give me a left offset, and we're going this way down, so the left offset would be over here, right offset would be over here. We're going to go from that station, and we're going to do an interval, I'll say every 10 feet. And we're going to accept that. And now we're going to open up the view. Again, I used view 8 last time for my profile model, but it can also be a cross-section model. And then when we look in there, if we slide down through there, we should get some vertical or horizontal lines. And these horizontal lines are coming from the survey data. And so we reported this to the Bentley folks, and they still have not fixed that issue where survey data shows up in our 3D model. And that's what's causing these vertical lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the survey file, and we're going to turn off that text the correct way. And then we're also going to then come back to this file and delete, if we can, any survey data that's in this 3D model. And in fact, I'll go ahead and do that right away. So just get this view number 2 active, the default 3D. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do an edit, select all. You'll see I got 60 elements, and when I hit the delete key, that goes down to 47. So 13 items from the survey file were in this file, and we had to delete them out. Now this text is still showing up. That's just a referenced in, but actual survey data a second ago was referenced into this file, and we deleted it by doing that select all delete. So let's go back to the survey file. So I'm going to do a file open, I'm going to go to the survey file. In the survey file, remember we turned off all the levels including text, but we're going to turn that text back on. I'm going to expand it out, open a little bit further. We got a used filter. So now I'm looking for the survey text options. Here we go. I'm going to turn those on. There we go. I think those are all the items that we need to turn on. Survey text name and number, survey text feature, text elevation and description. Now the correct way to turn off survey text so that it doesn't show up in your cross-section view is by going over, and you got to be in the survey file to do this, is by going over to task and then sliding down to civil tools and then all the way down to survey. Once you open up the survey tools, the very last icon on the bottom row is turn off all annotation. If you turn that annotation off, it will now not show up in your cross-section view of your corridor. Now typically the surveyors have been turning that off, but every once in a while we'll get a surveyor that turns it off by level name, and again, level name does not work. It will still show up in your cross-section view. So let's go back to our corridor file, and we'll look at our 3D view and see if there's any text in there still. You can see the text is gone now. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut a section again and see if any of that text, survey text, shows up in our cross-section view. Again, I'm going to go back to task. I'm going to go to civil tools. I'm going to go to corridor modeling, and I'm going to go to the open cross-section view. It's the first icon in the fourth row up. It says locate the alignment, so I'm going to locate the alignment. Left offsets on that side, right offsets on that side. We're going to start there. We're going to go to interval of 10, and now we're going to select the view. And now if we navigate through those sections, we should not see any horizontal lines. Okay, so that looks good. Okay. Let's look back at the manual, see if we got everything done in step 4. We talked about the survey text and how to fix that. And then in step 5, we actually went back into the survey file and we turned off the levels, or we turned on the levels for survey. One other thing we didn't do in step 5 is there's another way you can actually turn off certain features in there, and I'd like you to know how to do that as well. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So let's go back to survey. We're going to check in. Now last time we were in survey, we turned on just the levels that turned on the text, but this time we're going to go into the level manager and turn all the levels on. Notice the text is still off because that's being turned off by the annotation in the survey tools. But I want to turn off all these other lines except, again, for the edge of pavement, edge of shoulder, and the terrain. And so to do that, you can go into the Project Explorer. We're going to go into the Survey tab now. We're not going to modify the survey data. We're just going to turn off items we don't want to see. So we're going to leave that lock there, that the surveyor will typically lock the file before he sends it to you. And so that's fine. We can still go in there and turn on and off items. And so we're going to go into the all points features and all linear features. And if we look back at the manual, it says uncheck the box next to all point features. And then it says uncheck the box next to all linear features. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. What's going to happen when we do that, we're going to turn everything off. So all points are off and all linear features are off. And all we're left with is our terrain model. But if you look at the manual, it then says expand the leaf next to the all linear features and check on the box next to point 121 and 207. Those happen to be the edge of pavement, existing edge of shoulder and the edge of pavement. So let's turn on 121 and 207. So we're going to go back to the Project Explorer. We're done with the point features, but this is where we want it to do turn on the certain linear features. And again, the first one we want to do is the 121 survey feature, which is the edge of shoulder, and then the second one is the 207, which is the edge of pavement. So this is another way you can control what you see in the survey file. Typically, it's best to do it with the survey tools and not the level manager. So let's go on back to the corridor file again. I'm going to check it in. And you can see that now that the 3D view is much cleaner now that we only have those two items on. Before, when we turned it off with the level manager, we had a lot more stuff showing up from the survey file. Okay, so that finishes this video. This is finish of page 1 of the bridge indent layout exercise.